All right, recording is on. Good morning, Usha. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm very well. The whole morning was about preparing myself for this interview. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you for being part of a meaningful conversation interviews that we are doing nowadays. And thank you for taking the time to do this. I don't know how shall I begin, but let me start with you're known in so many ways, Usha. And like you're known in the region for doing transgenerational healing, doing some healing. You're known in the corporate sector, you're doing some coaching, and you're doing some also health check through transgenerational healing. But you're also known in India, some part of Europe, Far East, by doing transgenerational healing, which we are going to talk about later on. When you put all this together between Usha the healer, a transgenerational healer, or a coach, or you do also a lot of process work, and you facilitate in leadership, when you put all this together, what would it make Usha today?
Usha, that the description that you've given would make Usha someone who is deeply invested in being human and facilitating others to be human.
Now, what does that mean?
You know, we've reached in my, and this is of course my view, and this is how I'm looking at it. So we reach a stage in our evolution as a race, as human beings, to a point where me as a human being has very little value unless I have added on several layers of qualifications and labels and symbols that then make me worthwhile, worth somebody's attention. So me as me minus any of these labels and symbols is not worth attention. So we have branding, talk about branding, we have talk about visibility, we have talk about being out there, projecting oneself that will attract value. And only when I do all of that and whatever I get in exchange for that is associated with me as my value. In my view, we've got it completely wrong, or somewhere along the way, we missed the plot completely. My primary value is my humanness. And if I don't have access to my humanness, and if I'm not anchored in my humanness, everything else that I accumulate is just baubles, as they call it. Just decorations. So today, the way I see myself is, irrespective of what work that I do, what work I do, or in which area of life I do work, my objective and my internal process is, in doing this, am I facilitating that individual or that group to become more human? So it's almost like an obstacle race. You know, we now have to undo, or in my view again, reverse over all these obstacles that we've set ourselves up for and touch base with who I am. So that's how I would describe myself.
Yeah. So as we had many conversations through being human and consciousness and these arenas, but when you say human, when you say helping somebody to be human, and a lot of talk about this topic anymore, what are some of the qualities or some of the indicators that tells us this person or this person is a human or less a human or more a human?
You know, the question itself I find interesting because that is an indication of how far we've gone away from ourselves.
Hmm.
Okay?
Interesting.
And I'm not making that about you or about anyone out there. Or when I say this, I'm including myself. When I say now I've reached a point, or we have collectively reached a point that we don't know what it means to be me unless you point out to me what are the indicators to recognize myself. So the question in itself is kind of an answer of where we are.
Hmm.
So having said that, being human would be a discovery that each one has to now engage in, a journey, because we have to go back and touch ourselves and see, okay, what is it about me that makes me human, that makes me me? Personally, I would look at the ability to engage without a mask, the ability to connect to other people, the ability to listen,
Mm-hmm.
because when I listen to you, I see who you are. I understand who you are. I see who you are. Your emotions, what impacts you, what touches you, what are your pulls and pushes, who is this person who I am engaging with. Now, in order to be able to do that with you, I need to know how to do that with myself first. I need to know who I am if I am not any of those labels and qualifications and professional associations and symbols that I have got attached myself with. If I'm not all of that, who am I is my process. And if I'm able to, as much as I'm able to go into that process, I will be able to offer that space to the other. So as an indicator for me, it would mean the ability to listen, the ability to feel, and the ability to respond to my feelings and to my impulses without violating your boundaries.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting what you said originally about the question itself. Really interesting. So here, just to get past this, before we conclude, if somebody comes in to Usha for help, whether it's in the healing arena or in the process work arena or in coaching arena, how would you help this person like to be human?
I don't know if I can help that person to be human through a set of actions that are directed at that person. But I think what I have observed and what I have found helps is when I am holding a space where I am coming in purely from the perspective of a human being, not as a healer or a therapist, not as a coach, not as a facilitator, but we are two human beings sitting face to face, and you're sharing your story with me, irrespective of the context. There is a story, and you're sharing that story with me, and I am fully available and present to listen to you. Now, when I enter a space or when I create that space for that person, I'm literally every single time I see that that person, although he or she might start off with a certain set of statements like, oh, I'm from here and this is what I do and whatever, whatever formal introduction, by the end of that conversation, they have dropped all of those barriers, all of those labels, and they're telling me their true story
Mhm.
that is filled with their emotions, filled with their experiences. They've dropped that awareness of their social position or their professional position and any of those other criteria out of the window. And therefore, to answer your question, I think when I'm able to come in from that internal location, organically, I create that space where that other person also is able to meet me there.
Hmm.
And I think that is the way it is helpful.
Yeah, and thank you about mentioning the created space, which is I would like to touch on. How would somebody like you in this field, like us in this field of helping people to get to better place where they are, how do we create a space for them to be who they are, at least during that period of the engagement, and to be a lab or to be an exercise for them to go through life? How would you create that space?
I'm conscious that every question you ask me, Arif, I don't have a short answer for it. And I hope my longish answers eventually end up answering your question. Yeah.
We could do another. We could do another interview. That's fine. Just go on.
So I think the how of it actually really has come to me because of the how of my own journey and reaching where I am today. Because in my own life, everything that I have experienced, everything that I have encountered in myself, in the world outside, every process that I have been through in my mind, I think really has what has contributed to preparing me for this role.
Mm.
So there is no technique as such beyond saying, unless you have done inner work, don't attempt to create space on the outside. I'm sorry to put it so emphatically, but I don't know a better way of saying this or a nicer way of saying this. Inner work, working with your own material, is an absolute must in order to be able to create a safe space, and safe is the key word here,
Mm-hmm.
a safe space to hold someone who is in some form of pain or confusion or turmoil, and that's how they are going to reach you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about the inner world. It's all about the inner landscape. How much are you able, or how much invested are you in your inner landscape? And then that you would be able to put it out there for somebody else.
Inner world and inner work.
Inner work. Yeah.
So one is to be to get familiar with your inner landscape, which by itself requires that kind of attention to it. And then how have you learned to navigate that space in you?
Mm-hmm.
And how comfortable, therefore, are you with your own inner world, which comes through some form of inner work? And your comfort with that will be reflected in the comfort that you're able to provide on the outside.
Yeah. She's, I want to talk about also, it sounds like, a self-mastery, which is something that you do since 2007. And I want to talk about this when we talk about initially, transgen and self-mastery. But before I get into that, Usha, uh, what would one thing or a couple of things that contributed in your life throughout all your life that made you the person who you are today?
Who am I today? Who is the person that I am today? I don't know that honestly, who I am.
And, and what really contributed in making you who you are today?
Who I am today, every minute that I've lived has contributed to making me who I am today. Because I've been on a journey from the time I was born, and everything has contributed. Now that's of course not what you mean by asking that question, I think. So let me, what has contributed to who I am today? I think it is my life. maybe you need to rephrase it a little, Arif, because could you rephrase it, please? I'm not sure exactly what you are referring to.
What is your secret recipe, Usha? I mean, I know you shared a lot of things through your workshops about your journey, and of course, there must be something which was a tipping point for you to take this path or to be who you are today.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you for rephrasing it. So let me begin by saying that the biggest factor to becoming who I am today is to recognize at one point in my life that the life that I was leading was very, very limited. And there was another part of me which kept telling me, this is not what you were meant to be. This kind of a limited understanding of who you are, limitation in terms of expressing myself, limitation in terms of feeling very unworthy and undeserving. So this whole bunch of stuff which I know all of us can relate to, we all touched there at some point or the other. Now that got to a point where it was unlivable. And fortunately for me, the voice kept saying, no, this is not who you are. This is not what you're meant to be. And that's when the search began. This conviction that a limited life experience is not the life that I'm meant to live. So that conviction set me on a journey of self-discovery. And cutting the story short, I think the most significant aspect or definitions of who I am today would be through some ideas and values that I hold as truths. So one defining value or idea that I hold is that we are not passive recipients of life. We are co-creators of our life. And in that context, victimization or feeling a victim is not the truth. In every situation that I see myself or one sees oneself, if you are in it, you have actively contributed in creating it. So this is a core principle on which I view my life. And this has really contributed immensely in how I have evolved since that time, since that understanding. The second thing is, I'm going to use an Indian word, which may be familiar to many, ahimsa, or non-violent actions, thoughts, behaviors, has to be the absolute bottom line for anything that you do, think, feel, become. This has become another guiding principle for me. So if I were to say I'm not a victim, so if I find myself in a situation, I have contributed to it. That's one thing. Second thing is, there is absolutely no room for violence here of any sort. Violence here I would translate as transgression of boundaries, violating a boundary. So either in my actions or in my thoughts or in my attitudes or in my feelings. That is an absolute no-no for us to coexist peacefully. So these are the two guiding principles, I would say, which has created who I am.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that took most of your life journey to have these convictions and values and to live by them, for
I'm
sure.
I'm still practicing them, Arif. It's not like I've perfected them.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, for sure.
Work in progress.
Let me get to a more precise and like microscope it a little bit. You remember what Joseph Campbell said, like, the circle of life, or the vicious circle of life, it starts with separation, initiation, and return. And probably what I was mostly referring to is, what is that initiation for you to get back into the journey so you could return to who you really are, to your higher self, to the source? What is that initiation for you?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean when you say the word initiation.
Tipping point. What really got you, the spark that got you into this path? Because what all of us, we want to go to this path. We hear about it. We want to become aware. I guess the two things that you have said that you live by now, and you practice and work in progress, it did not just come from nowhere. There must be a spark that ignite that thing that starts you in the journey.
So, as I said, what your question takes me back to is that very, very low point that I had touched in my life, when everything was completely black and dark, and it seemed as though I had reached absolute dead end in the way that my life was panning out. And that created a lot of desperation in me, in terms of, okay, this is not it, it cannot be this way. But this precise statement, if you when you're asking me this question, the precise statement that comes to my mind, a specific statement I used to tell myself in that period, was this very, very sharp pain that I used to feel, that I am unworthy of love, unworthy of attention, unworthy of anything that would that now goes under love, as I understand love. Unworthy of approval, unworthy of attention, unworthy of love. So I used to be on my knees, doubled up, praying every day. Maybe I don't know, or I'm not capable of receiving love, but because I know the pain of not being loved, please teach me how to love. Because I can understand the pain of not being loved. So whether I get it or not, please teach me so that I can be the channel of love to others. This specifically, Arif, was my prayer every single day for the longest time in that period. And I think that was the tipping point. Once I got in touch with that idea and I started to intensely hold that in my mind, in my being, then magically things started to unfold. I started to come across people, and then the journey on this side of that period began.
And that's how transformation get created.
I think transformation for anybody begins when with a question that you're holding with yourself, and it should become a burning question.
Mm-hmm.
When the question is a burning question and it consumes the whole of your being, all of your thoughts, all of your internal processes is consumed by that fire of that question, by the heat of that question. Transformation happens in that moment, in that period.
Yeah, I like that, like the burning desire inside for the craving and that thing that I would like almost losing my breath if I don't get it.
Yeah.
Unless that state of feeling and mind and being does not get created, transformation would not happen. I like that.
Yes. And one thing I want to add here, Arif, is that this question is not something that we borrow from the world.
Mm.
It's not something that I've come across and it's got my interest and now I'm dying to learn about it or know about it. It comes from life experience, lived experience. And the question emerges from within.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important criteria of that question.
Yeah. So that takes us, do I have to live for a long time, like, till I get 40 or till I get 30 to get that experience to evolve such a questions in my mind?
Life has a way of taking you to that question. That is your question. It's not something that we can, again, be inspired. We can be inspired by it, but we cannot arrive there through our manipulation of our thoughts.
Mm.
There are other smaller questions that we encounter on a day-to-day basis, and we are busy dealing with those, processing those. And as much as we might wish it, for whatever reason, it doesn't come. We cannot borrow it from the world. But if there is such a question that you need to look into, life will take you there.
Yeah.
So that would be the other tenet which I picked up along the way. Trust the process of life.
Yeah.
Trust the process of life.
This is really interesting because I do want to go there through the 7 stages of, getting you there, and start with being here and now, then to more stages. Maybe some other time we can touch on that in a lengthy and in depth. Being who you are today, and the practice that you do, and the belief and the values that you hold, and work in progress, all of this, how do you view the world today, the world that we live in? And I don't want to turn it to a COVID-19 world, but the people that you encounter through the past 7 months who are feeling the fears, the anxiety, the whatever they're feeling, and between what you see and you experience and yourself, how do you view the world nowadays?
When you say the past few months, I'm assuming that we are referring to the recent past.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So in my view, Arif, this is a mind-blowing phenomena that we are living in.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about the virus or an infection. I'm talking about the entire phenomena of what life has come to be in these few months. Never before in history has this kind of a lockdown, where literally every human being on the planet has been asked to stay indoors and not come in touch with the world outside. There have been pandemics before, there have been lockdowns and quarantine before, but not to the extent that we are experiencing today, where practically every country is locked down. For me, this is a very, very loud cry from life, from nature, that we have badly missed the plot of life itself. That's how I receive it, and that's how I experience it. Somewhere we have messed up big time. It's very interesting, isn't it? This is the very similar to how we would probably discipline a child. Go to your corner or go to your room and think about what you have done. That's what every one of us is being told by life today. Stay indoors and think about what you have done. So I did my thinking. I did my reflections. And this has kind of strengthened what I have already shared with you. The way that we have been externally focused, the mad blind struggle for power, the greed, the unreasonable, irrational, consumeristic kind of an approach to life, where acquiring more and more and more is the business of life. That's how it has come to mean. Life itself means acquisition. From beginning to end, if we were to review a human life the way it is in today's context, starting from the basic, from a newborn baby, for God's sake, there is competition about what kind of clothes are we buying for that baby, what kind of toys do I have, who's got the better toy, who's got branded clothes, starting from there, you know. It's about acquisition. Acquisition, acquisition, acquisition. Our school education is to acquire a good college seat. Our university education is so we acquire a good job. Then the race begins. A better job, more salary, more pay, more status, more wealth, more acquisition, more power. It's just acquisition based. And I see that this is where we lost it completely. We've lost the plot of what it means to be human. We've lost the whole spiritual philosophy of being human, where we receive life as a gift from the Supreme, and we value every moment of our life, embodying whatever values that we all appreciate, living that life, and living it with an attitude of gratitude, holding this life as precious, as a blessing. We've lost that entire picture. It's all about acquisition. So for me, this is where I'm seeing where we have reached, and I'm also seeing why we have been asked to go back inside and think about what we have done.
Well, thank you for answering that. This is really deep. And when I listen to you, I can also feel and see there is wisdom, and there is a lot of pre-work that took place before the view to get accumulated or to get clear. What would you tell somebody who does not have done a lot of self-work or development or spiritual work, and now they're faced with such thing? How would they deal with it?
The simplest things, simplest activity that comes to my mind is to be able to, from the heart, identify what I'm most grateful for and what I most appreciate, what I've received today. If at the end of every day, it's not about anything big, it's not anything fancy, but what are those things that I have received today which I deeply appreciate and which I'm really grateful for? So it could start with a simple practice like that. It's whatever practice or process, Arif, in my view, has to be something that makes you look inward.
But
That's
and
exactly.
I know, like, we when we offer a suggestion to somebody, to start meditating, which they never have done before, they really struggle. So to have somebody to look inward, it's not an easy process, is it?
It isn't. It isn't. But I'm saying if we have reached a really, we've reached rock bottom. So obviously to make a turn around is not going to be easy. And I don't want to personally dilute the importance of this by offering some soft measures. Okay, I don't want to dilute the importance of what needs to happen for all of us where we have reached today. So inwards need not mean getting into a deep meditative state. Inwards could simply mean, even as I'm talking to you, in the time that I'm not talking, can I watch myself breathing? Can I just observe how I'm breathing? So of course, starting from something as basic as that, there are several practices and there's a huge process involved that can take you further and further inward. But if you want a simple answer, I would say figure out what works for you that will help you take you inward, even for a few moments every day. Inward could be anything that is not focused on the world outside.
Fantastic. So I'll just take it like, do whatever you need to do whatever you can do to bring it from looking at the outside and look into the inside, look at the inward, which takes us to two more questions. One question is about how are you foreseeing the future from now? And I would like to connect it with humanity, where we started. Where is the humanity is going, and how do you see it yourself?
There are two ways of answering this question, Arif. One is, as long as there is violence and war as a big player in our life, I don't see it going to a place where any of us would want to be. So another way of saying it is, there is no way forward if we don't adopt the principle of non-violence in its entirety. In the way I think about you, in the way that I feel towards you. And when I say you, I mean, of course, the world at large. And if I don't have this other value that I want to introduce here, the value of friendship, the attitude of friendship, which means we share the space and let's understand how we can coexist harmoniously. Now, if we adopt these values, that I will not violate you, you will not violate me, and we will figure out how to coexist harmoniously. If we adopt these values, then we have a beautiful future. Mm-hmm. Because this could be that tipping point of transformation, as we spoke about a while ago. Because right now, the world as it is symbolic of that burning desire to change something. Something needs to change. It has never happened that the whole world has come to a halt, come down on its knees. So if we were to recognize this as that tipping point of transformation, then we have an amazingly beautiful future waiting for us. And in my view, these are the key features of that transformation. That no matter in what I do, think and feel, and my perception, there is any room for violence. And the second, supporting that is the attitude of friendship. Mm-hmm. You and I are coexisting. Let's figure out how to do this harmoniously. These two values can be that, launching board that will take us into that very beautiful future.
Which is, these are the bases of being human and to develop and to create a humanity atmosphere and society.
Yes, humanness is the key. So if you're able to get in touch with that, so for me, these are the values. These are the bottom line. Now we could have a whole range of values that are nuanced, of nuances of nonviolence and nuances of friendship and compassion. So that's the way forward, and that's what I foresee. And if we miss the point, unfortunately, should that happen, then I don't see a future that is worth even talking about. Mm-hmm. We are at that tipping point.
Yeah. I really want to connect this to what you do mostly and what you're known for, whether in the region or in part of Europe or in the Middle East, in Far East. You're known for you're a healer through transgenerational healing. And I know you don't like this, but it's a form of family constellation. But I know you have a distinction between that. So what is your relationship with this modality when you use healing, when you heal a group or an individual?
See, all that I've been talking about, right, until now, we've been talking about, also rests on a two-pronged approach to life. And the way, in this context, the way I see it, one is healing and the other is strengthening.
What is the other one?
Strengthening.
Strengthening, okay.
These are the two, this is what I see as a two-pronged approach going forward. Healing and strengthening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, healing really refers to all those unprocessed issues that we are sitting on, which are hurting for real. We are all possibly bleeding from those wounds, psychological wounds, experiential wounds, right? Now, we cannot expect or hold that expectation from us to develop a positive attitude and move forward when these wounds are still bleeding. So for me, transgenerational healing belongs to that segment of a life process where I go into all the past of the person's family and explore what are those wounds that are still bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
And invariably in transgenerational healing, we are referring to the wounds of our ancestors. So they've had difficult experiences, life-changing experiences that have not been healed, that have not been resolved in their own lifetime. So the idea is that we carry those imprints as the descendants of those people. We carry those imprints in our mind, and it is likely to play out in our life as well. So transgenerational healing is that body of work towards addressing the healing part of going forward.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very we all have ancestors, we all know that. So everybody has a transgenerational component that is impacting their life. Some of them are the good ones. A lot of our gifts, which we claim to be hereditary, are all also transgenerational, but also some of our woes, some of our challenges. So in this process, I look into that area.
And this is one modality that you cannot do by yourself. Like, if there is a trauma, if there is some kind of whatever blockage to move you forward personally, you can work on it through personal healing or through self-work. But this is one thing that really requires an intervention from a profession. So from there, Oshia, I know Bert Hellinger does some kind of form of transgenerational healing. John Payne does it through family constellation, and a few people here and there, but you're known in the region for that. Now, I want to connect it with whatever time we live in and traumas and anxiety building in us in this generation. Do you think we need more of this modality in the future to heal what is happening today with this generation?
For sure, because every generation will come with its own baggage of the past that has not been healed. So in a very generic sense, yes, of course, there in the future, that future meaning future generations, I mean, way beyond my lifetimes, possibly. But yeah, that is life. That is the process of life. We are always coming in through parents, and as long as we're coming in through a set of parents, by default, we will be also carrying imprints that belong to their past.
Mm.
Therefore, there will always be a transgenerational component to everyone's life. Bert Hellinger has actually done amazing work. He's a pioneer in this field of family constellation therapy, and it's quite a popular process in Europe and South America. But it's also an indigenous process. He himself picked it up from the tribes that he worked with in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And in India also we have that idea. So it's also an indigenous process, and these cultures have traditions related to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for going through this. Uh, just one last thing. Throughout your whole life and through that tipping point when you find yourself in rock bottom and then you started your journey of spirituality and there is the lockdown. I see the other day when we talked about, you talked about a couple of things that we have not touched before, and I have not seen you talking about them before. One thing is colonialism, and the other thing is, why do I need to read a book written by a Western writer, not to defy the quality or the value they bring, but why would I want to read something originally is from India and read about it or learn about it from somebody else? What got you interested in those two, and how do you link it with your journey as in total?
That's a long story that I have yet to read of myself. But yeah, I think this is also, it has to do with my own spiritual journey and my own internal process, Arif, that as I'm every day peeling off layers and trying to get a better, more expansive response to the question, who am I?
Mm.
Because that's the driving question. It's a question that is worth asking every day of your life even, and come up with a new answer. Or in every period of your life, go back to the question, who am I? And you will see that your answer hopefully has expanded of who am I. So it was in that process that I encountered this whole idea of who am I? And it took me to the identity of me as an Indian.
Mhm.
And I came to a dead end, because other than knowing that I was born in the country and I hold an Indian passport and I look like an Indian, I did not have much to say about who am I. And so that was probably where this whole exploration started. And I realized that the way my education and all my experiences have contributed to me has actually kept me very far away from my roots, because I was convent educated, and so everything that I have known, I have read in English. My own languages were not given that much of prominence in my education, so I don't know how to read my own scriptures. I don't know, I'm not proficient in any of my mother tongue, which is Tamil. I cannot read and write. I don't know how to read those books. So it's the pain of this distance and separation from my identity, what is mine rightfully, and where I am today, which is very far away from claiming all that belongs to me. The pain of that is what has gotten me thinking about all the various influences that contributed to creating and maintaining this distance.
Mm. Mm. You know, it's really interesting when you say it's part of asking the question, who am I? And I never looked at it from a point of geographical or language identity. And I think this is very, very interesting for our next topic, our next interview, to talk about how are we going to link our identity or unpack, let's say, unpack the identity and see which part belongs to the who we are today, and answering that fundamental question is, who am I?
Yeah. Just one thing I'd like to correct. Sorry for interrupting you. It's, for me, it's not so much geographic, although geography makes a big impact on the history, and vice versa. So geography has a very big impact on history and in human evolution. But having said that, for me, when I say India, I think I'm referring more to the culture,
Okay.
what India has been and has held and represented over several millennia. So I'm referring to that. But yes, geography also.
Absolutely. I mean, culture is a wide thing also
Yes.
that contribute in who we are today. and
Yes.
who to be as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So you got 1 minute to say what you wanted to say that I did not give you a chance to say it.
Oh, wow. I think I said more than you wanted me to say. I've just thoroughly enjoyed having this chat with you, Arif, and I don't know if there's any value that can be transferred from our conversation, but I found it immensely valuable just to check in with myself and check in with who am I and what are my thoughts and what is, because it's not, so it was a very valuable experience for me being on this conversation with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there one last thing you want to, just give it to the population, who our viewers, regarding the inner work in less than a minute?
I will probably go back and repeat what I said a while ago, Arif, which is that every human being, since it can be safely assumed that whoever is listening to this conversation is in some degree of comfort as compared to many unfortunate ones out there who are dealing with this disease as a disease. It is our moral, spiritual obligation to go within and get in touch with our humanness. It is what we owe to this world for having been spared what others are having to undergo. I see it as a moral, spiritual obligation and responsibility to get in touch with our humanness.
Amen to that. Thank you. Thank you, Anuradha. Anuradha is the formal name. Akka, also known as Oshà, and I've been calling you as Oshà, but you're the same person. So thank you very much for this interview and for the time and being part of meaningful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.